All right, welcome back to the Linking into Sales Social Selling podcast. This is episode number 50, and unfortunately, Martin is not able to join us today. He's once again out on the road and working with a whole bunch of small business owners out there in North Carolina, getting them very familiar with using social media and putting them out there for you. So if you're in the market to sell social or small businesses, be very grateful for Martin. But anyways, today we're going to start with we're bringing back Gil Pagan of Lease, Sales Rep for part 2. In episode 49, we had talked about 3 ways to prospect and set appointments with prospects, and now we're actually going to talk about 3 steps to close a sale and open new business. So let's go and welcome back Gil Pagan. Gil, how's it going?
It's going great, Ray. It's good to be with you again to do this second set of sales-focused stuff. I love this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely, me too. And I know our audience really enjoys it as well. We had a few folks who I guess took advantage of the podcast as well, and a number of folks that really enjoyed sharing that out there in social media. So all those of you that did, thank you very much. So why don't we go ahead and let's go ahead and get into it, and let's talk about these 3 steps, to get more initial appointments, and then get into those the additional steps going forward in order to start some new business. So let's so what would you think? Step 1, you set the appointment, you got things are going very well. What should you be doing in step 1?
Yeah, in step 1. Typically, after you've gotten the appointment and they've expressed interest, there is a process that we call the exploratory call or meeting to find out what their needs are, and obviously that's part of the process of discussion. You go over their pain, right, which is typically what kind of prompted them to respond to your inquiry, if you will. And once you reached out to them on LinkedIn based on our discussion last time. So number 1 is to obviously have that exploratory call, discuss their pain. And I typically start these conversations with people in multiple industries with tell me what's going on in an open-ended kind of way so that we can get the prospect to be open and share with you what's on their mind. Then, the second thing I typically say, and this is still in step 1. Okay, there's a couple of bullets in step 1, a couple of bullets in step 2, and a couple of bullets in step 3. So when you're having that exploratory discussion, Greg, we're sharing obviously what their pains are, but also asking them what's going on in an open-ended way, and they're sharing with you what's happening. At the same time, when you're dialoguing with them, you're being very direct and transparent, saying, you know what, there may not be a fit here. But as we speak and continue to chat about what the needs are, whether this is the face-to-face meeting or on the phone, we'll be able to determine that together. Is that okay with you? So you kind of move through that process of what I call an exploratory call or a meeting, and you start discussing their pain, discussing your solutions and how you can help them. And as you move through that process, you're discussing the solutions for whatever difficulty they're having with their business, whether, I'll use our example for sales, whether it's generating leads, getting appointments, closing business over the phone or face-to-face. Everybody has different problems. So we discuss the solution, our service offering, and then you move into a discussion about pricing, if applicable. Because sometimes, depending upon what you're selling, Greg, you may not be able to give pricing until you have a really full picture of what their needs are. So I'm just, generally speaking, for us, we're able to give a ballpark number just based on prior experience when we're talking to a client. So as you're moving this this conversation down what I call the sales channel, if you will, you're discussing your solution and your offering, discussing pricing. You're also discussing your contract terms. We typically work in this way. We have a 6-month contract. We have a monthly fee, and that's how we work with our prospects. Help me to understand once you give them the pricing and discussion and discovering what their pain is and having that open-ended conversation. You're kind of moving them to the next step of, okay, now you have a sense of cost, you have a sense of timeline. Our solution seems like it would be the right fit for you potentially. Help me to understand your decision-making process internally in your organization. So you're getting all this on the front end in the first step during that exploratory meeting with this prospect. You're trying to obviously get this information on the front end so that you could get them on a what I call a sales track. So once you help me understand what your decision-making process is it you only? Is there a CEO involved? Is there a manager involved? How many people are involved in this decision-making process? And then you, once you understand that, you provide a quote if that's what your process is. You send them over the quote. So now you've already identified the pain for this person. You've already discussed your pricing. You discussed your contract terms. You discussed what is your internal decision-making process. All this happens in that first exploratory meeting. Greg, my experience with people that have challenges in closing sales is they don't ask all those questions on the front end, on the beginning of the conversation, during the exploratory meeting. They wait to the second and third conversation. Then at that time, it's too late. So that's been my experience. I don't know what your experience has been, Greg, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, well, I think that I think the process is probably pretty similar to what most folks are facing out there in their sales organizations. Probably with some minor differences with process. I've seen some that marketing is very heavily involved in it, very little sales, but and then there's some where sales is extremely involved in it, and by the time they get to the point where the prospect is very well informed about the services and the products and all that stuff that you're offering, getting to the exploratory call to discuss pricing, understanding the buying process, the contract terms, all that stuff really does have to be kind of laid out. But I think that what most sales folks probably keep in mind is that they're there to help the buyer navigate through that process and to make it as seamless and as easy as possible, because people hate they hate buying stuff, especially when it comes to B2B organizations, because everyone kind of does the process a little bit different, and it can be the contract terms can be really difficult to understand, or they're just too loose, or they just don't see it eye to eye, and there's potential problems all the way through the process. But the exploratory call, I think, is excellent for kind of hammering those things out.
No, absolutely, and your points are well taken. Everybody has their own process for sales and how they close them, and again, if you're selling a product versus a service, I think that things will change. But in that first exploratory call and discussion, you're trying to get all these questions answered in the midst of your discussion with the prospect after you've gotten the appointment, right? Now you're having this, evidently there's a need there. Then the next step in that process is obviously, I'm going to send you a quote. So now the prospect will say, okay, great, when can you put a quote together? And I said, no worry, I can send you a quote within 48 hours. That's great. Then your follow-up question to that is, okay, then once I send you the quote, what happens next? And what happens a lot is that some salespeople don't do this. They say, okay, so I'm going to send you a quote, and they don't get a date for follow-up after the quote is done. And I know this, business owners from CEOs to small businesses to sales reps, they just, not everybody, I'm just saying in general, some of them just don't get that commitment to a follow-up. Now I send you to this tomorrow. When can we discuss it to move through the process? So all of this is happening in that first discussion. Getting them on the timeline. I'm going to send you the quote. We're going to have a conversation, let's say, in a week, and put it on the calendar to follow through on that. And this is one of the nuggets for the listeners, is that I want the prospect to agree that allowing us or you to hound them until you get some kind of answer. And let me kind of clarify what that means. When I say hound them, Greg, I mean, okay, so I'm going to send you a quote. You're going to have a week to get it. And you know how some people, they'll get a quote from you and then that appointment is set and they're not sitting at their desk for that 9 o'clock appointment that you agreed to a week ago?
Yeah.
Because either they had something came up, kids got sick, they got pulled into another meeting, got to have flat tire, or they had no intention of being at the desk. I mean, it just happens, okay? Being straight there with you and our listeners, right? So I get the prospect, and I recommend this to people, to allow me to hound you until I get you on the phone. If something happens, you're not there when I call you. And 95% of the time they say, absolutely, not a problem. So that's a nugget. You get them to commit to doing that, to getting that date down and hounding them. So this is all happening in step one, the exploratory call, finding out what their needs are, going through your pricing, going through your contract terms, going through their decision-making process. What is your timeline? Send them a quote, following up. All that is in step one. Step two is now you sent them the quote, right? You already, it's already out there. And you've already got, hopefully you got a commitment. You got a commitment that they were going to, agree to talk again about, the quote that you gave. And you're following up. You're talking to them. Hopefully got them on the phone. And you're trying to figure out what's happening with this proposal or this quote. And a couple of things can happen on this second step. You already got them to commit to talk to you again. You gave them pricing, gave them timelines. They agree to talk to you again, but they don't have a decision on the second step, because they either they need to discuss this with people internally. They haven't had a chance to do it. They just, for some reason, it just didn't happen. So you got to go backwards again. Get them to commit again to another discussion, get it on the calendar. Step number two is to follow up, get them to commit again in order to move to next steps. And here's another nugget as well, Greg. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced this in your walks in business, but companies will ask for references and a contract. They'll say, "Oh, send me a contract so I can take a look at it." Right, Greg? Have you had that experience?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have, we'll get folks to say, let me talk to one of your customers, and that's why it's very, very important to maintain relationships with your customers and have a bucket of folks that actually can provide referrals and are happy to do it too. They're your best advocates, usually.
Oh, absolutely. And we get this, and we also talk to our clients about it as well. And when we give them counsel, when they're dealing with other customers and that, you have to watch when a prospect asks you for references and a contract. And sometimes what they're doing is considered to be a blow-off. And let me explain. They have not gotten buy-in in the company yet. They haven't made a decision that your pricing is appropriate, your contract is appropriate, that your services meet their needs. They haven't committed. And they say, "Oh, send me a contract and send me some references." So I say, "Hang on, hold the phone." I said, before we go that way, why don't we first agree that we got a fit here. We agree that the pricing makes sense, agrees the contract makes sense, that our product service meets your needs. You've got buy-in internally from the decision makers. Okay, so yeah, this all sounds good. We're all on the same page. Wonderful. So everything looks good to you? Absolutely. Do you have any other questions that I can answer for you? Before you start releasing references and giving them an agreement, you already got them to commit that everything you've already gave them is within their expectations, and they can commit, to a contract with you. A lot of people right away, because they're fearful. I'm saying the sales reps, the business owners, they're fearful of saying, "Wait, I'm not going to do that because you haven't agreed to anything yet. Why am I going to give you these things and jump through 3 or 4 hoops when you haven't agreed to nothing, bupkis.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, unless they have some sort of commitment to you, then you really shouldn't commit anything else to them other than maybe a piece of paper or send them a case study, right?
That right. If your service is consider are you have case studies and white papers and that kind of thing, okay, that's fine. And they're on your website and it's easy to send an email to them, absolutely. But to go through that process of giving them all this information when, quite frankly, A, they didn't commit, and secondly, they could be kicking tires with 3 other vendors, by the way, or 4 other vendors. So here you are giving them everything, and they haven't given you anything. I'm a big advocate for them to give you, I give you. You give me, I give you.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the way it demonstrates commitment, and if they're hemming and hawing on that, then it could be a potential blow-off. And you have to, get them in. If you see some of the things that I write, sometimes you got to put the customer in a box. Put them in a box, and they may not like it. Then that's probably a good thing from my perspective. Not everybody agrees with that, Greg. But.
Yeah, I think that well, penalizing them, or putting them in a box per se. I kind of think of the hockey reference there. Sometimes that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a bad idea to do that, because you do want to make sure that the customer that you're potentially bringing on is going to also be good for the company too. So I mean, if you bring on someone who's bad and you're just taking money, collecting a commission check, then but you're down the road, that client is out the door. That's not such a good client to have sometimes.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
That's true.
So let's talk about step 3.
Yeah. And so we got step number 1, exploratory call in the meeting, finding out all their needs. Right. Step number 2 is send them the quote and then follow up and get them to commit to next steps after that, and determine whether references and if they ask for references in the contract, you have to really think twice about that, get them to commit before you do that. And step number 3 is follow through and push. And I used the acronym PUSH, P-U-S-H, persist until something happens. Okay, so push them until something happens. And then, again, let me explain what that means. You agree to follow through in step 3, and you agree to reconnect after an X date. Let's say that's 2 weeks from the date or 1 week of the date when you send them the quote, and you're following up with them. They've been delaying you or hemming and hawing. They have been unresponsive. You have to look at why they're delaying. Let's assume that for some reason, we all had these issues where somebody asks for a contract, they ask for quotes, they commit to stuff, and then all of a sudden you give them all of that, they fall off the face of the earth. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I've had it. It's happened to us in this organization, and we have a certain process for that. And it's sending them an email and sending a couple of phone calls to them to get them to re-engage. And by re-engaging, we can analyze what's the issue. Is their delay is due to money? Is there a money issue here? Are they delaying because they're talking to other vendors? Are they delaying because they're unsure of your service offering and your product? And are they delaying because of you? And you need to get them to agree, and obviously and follow through and push, and find out what the issue is. And a lot of people feel uncomfortable with doing this, Greg. They just don't like pushing through and following and persisting until something happens. And what we've realized is that by going through this process of getting them through the exploratory call, sending the quote, getting them to commit, and following through aggressively based on everybody's commitment for follow-up and dates and the like, you end up closing a lot more sales that way by doing that. And if for some reason they are unresponsive after you've called them, let's say 5 or 6 times over the course of a couple of weeks, you've emailed them a couple of times, like I said before in the last podcast, always email, call, and they still fall out and they haven't responded, then I tell people to send an email that says something like this, and here's a bonus point here, Greg. It's that the email should say 4 things. I'm following up and reconnecting as we agreed, based on our conversation. This is the date that we agreed to follow up. I haven't heard from you after multiple contacts and emails and phone calls. I understand that people's lives change and we're busy, but 4 things probably happened as a result of you not getting back to me. 1, your priorities have changed. This is no longer urgent for you. You're no longer interested. 2, money is the issue. You ain't got any. I won't say it that way.
Right.
You ain't got any. Sorry. That was a slip. Maybe we can edit that out. I did something wrong. I did something wrong, meaning you didn't like the way I communicated with you. You didn't like the way I emailed you. You didn't like the way I pushed you, or something else totally different, that I'm unaware of. So please get back to me and let me know if any of these things are going on, so I can know how I can help, or if I don't hear back from you by, let's say, so-and-so day at this time, I'm going to close out your inquiry. Feel free to reach out to me when things are better for you. Thank you so much. And then you're done, basically, and close them out. And then when they call you back, obviously, then you know that they're re-engaged. But you have to be prepared to close them out and move on.
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot to managing your pipeline and knowing what is good money in the pipeline and what's not good money in the pipeline. I would add like a 5th one to that, and this is a callback to the previous episode. I put like number 5. Your hands got stuck underneath the filing cabinet, it fell on top of you, and I got to call 911.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Definitely get something to get them to make a phone call back or something like that. So because that's critical. Everyone loves a fast yes and a fast no, but I don't know anybody who likes a slow maybe. So
that is so true. Yep. So true, Greg, and that people just don't like to hear that. And I'm, since we're in the sales business, right?
Yeah.
We want to qualify them, make a decision, get onto a timeline, and then move on.
Yeah, definitely.
So very important.
Definitely. There's one thing that that I think that the last couple of days I spent some time in a sales meeting with where I'm working right now, and one of the things that kind of came up was in just hearing the salespeople in our discussions and our breakout sessions was that they're making phone calls to sell a particular product, and when you offer multiple products to offer, how do you know that the first product that you're offering is actually the one that they want? And then so should that first phone call, the exploratory phone call, be strictly about figuring out what product that they want, or should you actually be selling the company, in essence?
Yeah, that's a very good question, particularly when you have a company that has multiple product offerings. And I'm assuming that the sales reps are calling on prospects that 4 of your products, let's say, would all qualify for their company. Is that accurate?
Potentially. There's a potential. Sometimes, you could. There are companies out there that they offer multiple products, but you can have multiple decision makers throughout the company. So some companies will take a what's called a land and expand approach. For example, they'll sell into one department, but then they have other products that can sell into other departments too.
Right, it's a cross-selling kind of thing.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I gotcha. What I typically recommend is that if you have 3 or 4 or 5 product offerings under the umbrella of the organization, I typically go in with the offering that appeals to most, whatever that is. If it appeals to, if you're calling it to 3 industries, let's say government, education, healthcare, technology, let's say, and you're calling into those 4 industries for a product, I'd use the product that really crosses those 4 industries as my entryway. And then obviously in that conversation, you're going to try to tease out what other product may apply. And I would just go in with one. We're big believers that you don't want to confuse the prospect with so many offerings. First of all, their attention span is limited. Their time is limited. You want to hit them with one thing and go that way, and then open up the conversation, and then from there tease out what could be a potential opportunity, and then present the second offering that may be more applicable. Is my my suggestion on something like this.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Well, so if folks didn't listen to episode 49, please go back and listen to episode 49. But Gil, where can they learn a little bit more about you and Lisa Sales Rep?
Sure, they can visit leaseasalesrep.com, leaseasalesrep.com, or they can call 919-827-0019. That's our corporate office. And somebody will take care of them and take some information, and one of our people will call you back if you have some interest in learning more about what we do here at Lisa Sales Rep. Hopefully the information was valuable to you, and listen to podcast 49 and 50. If you implement some of these strategies that we've shared, you're definitely going to grow your business. You're going to close more business as a result of it.
Very good. And then if they need help, they can always give you a call. So, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining me today again, Gil. And make sure everyone out there who's listening, follow Lisa Sales Rep on Twitter, and also you can find him on Google Plus, LinkedIn, and Facebook. He's out there and he's got some great content to share out there. So, well, this wraps up episode 50 of the Linking into Sales Social Selling podcast. And come in and join our LinkedIn group if you haven't already. Follow us on Twitter. Just search for Linking into Sales. You can also find us on Facebook and Google Plus. Add us to your Google Plus circle as well, so that we get notifications of updates and things like that we put out there. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching and listening to Linking into Sales, helping salespeople support the sales cycle with social media. Thanks.